I'm passionate about the environment. I'm passionate about being green. So what you're going to see this evening is my passions. And just to make sure there are no mistakes, thanks Glenn for that introduction, I'm exercising what I've been told is academic freedom to say what I like. So, tough. Anyway, good evening everybody. Oh, come on, good evening. That's better, that's better. You take full advantage of the wine that UE has provided, so hopefully everyone's feeling in reasonably good spirits this evening. I'd like to start by introducing Jonas, my grandson, for the very simple reason that to me this is about the future. It's about the long-term future, and it's about what we do for our children, our grandchildren, and future generations. It's about saving the planet ultimately. And I'd like to start with a few acknowledgements. First of all, a very grateful acknowledgement to the University of the West of England for actually enabling me to be here today. It's a major opportunity, if I may say, it's a major honour to be representing the university. I'd also like to say just a little thank you to that other university up the road, because it was only because of what they did in inviting both myself and Eileen, my wife, into Bristol that we actually ever met. And the rest is history. I'd also like to say thanks to the Environment Agency for keeping me gainfully employed and off the streets for a significant period of time. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to Bristol Big Green Capital, or Bristol Green Capital Partnership, for allowing me to wear a green tie. There are various other organisations that I've owed thanks to, usually because I've pinched their pictures or some of their text. And if your organisation is not accredited here, I'll buy you a pint afterwards. And oh, by the way, if anything I say you disagree with, then as long as you buy me a pint, then I will happily argue the case for the environment. So let's start with an introduction. What I want to cover. I want to cover why being green is so important. I'm afraid there are one or two people somewhere who don't actually recognise some of the challenges we're facing. I'd like to describe how I think communities, businesses, regulators are responding to the challenges we're facing. And I'd like to give you what I believe to be some of the solutions that we need to achieve our green aspirations. Now, first of all, let's start with the facts. It's getting warmer. I trust no one's going to disagree with that. We've got to do something about it. It's getting warmer faster. We are emitting more carbon dioxide than ever before, and there's probably a connection between them. And it's only by virtue of the fact we've had a recession has the rate of increase dropped off very slightly. But fortunately, we've got some targets. If you notice, politicians are very good at signing up to long-term targets. So 2020, 2025, 2050. I suspect in the expectation they're not actually going to be held accountable for their delivery. But at least we've got something to achieve. So we know what the issues are, we know what we've got to achieve. The only question is, how are we going to do it? So, where does the CO2 come from? What are the challenges? Traffic. And we've actually got agreement that we label the performance of vehicles. And my challenge to everyone is, can we shift our view of vehicles from, I can go from 0 to 120 miles an hour in 10 seconds, or I can cruise at 140 miles an hour. But none of us ever do. We chug along round the streets of Bristol, moving at 5, 10 miles an hour if we're lucky. Or if we get onto the M32, we can go at 40 miles an hour. And it's all about fuel consumption. So I've got a boast, and it'll be interesting to meet up with a challenge. I can do 60 miles per gallon in my car, driving around, just watching how I go. And I think it's one of these issues that we ought to be more proud of. How we can actually save energy, how we can save fuel, rather than how we can use it. But I'd like to move further than that. I'd like to stick labels on power stations, on electricity suppliers. And we'll see then who's really got the red label. who has really got a challenge, and give people the choice. We've recently heard the whole idea of reducing the number of electricity tariffs from 1,800 to 4 per company. I would dearly like to see one of those tariffs being a green tariff. And the other tariff, I have to say, is one for low consumers, a social tariff, because we don't all consume large amounts of power. Actually, some of us are very careful. Let's reward those who are careful about the environment. Now, favourite subjects of mine, power stations, emissions, and generating electricity. Where does all that energy go? There is no shortage of energy. The sun pours it down on our planet every day. It washes around the waves and the seas every day. What do? We burn a precious resource. And what do we do with that precious resource? We waste 2/3 of it as heat. Because we put our power stations where we can't use any of that heat. We waste it. So what do we have left? Well, we've got 1/3 left. And what do we do with that 1/3? Well, we might use it to heat our houses. Or we use it in light bulbs, which are 5–10% efficient. We are incredibly wasteful. So one of the biggest challenges, I believe, is actually how we use that energy, as well as how we generate it. Unfortunately, in Bristol, we have got leadership in green use of energy in our houses. The Knowle West Media Centre, a house built of straw. Brilliant idea. But we've got challenges. We could build houses which don't need additional energy because we generate enough heat ourselves. In fact, we probably generate a vast amount of hot air. The passive house from Germany. But even in Bristol, we are supporting, through the Bristol Green Capital projects, various local initiatives, brilliant ideas that local people have come up with for saving energy. And let's start in the community. I mentioned earlier, we build huge power stations. We replace huge power stations with more huge power stations. The solution, I believe, is local. And let's start local again in Bristol and the benefits. But let's put it in a national perspective. Yeah, renewable energy has a major role to play in UK energy generation. Increasing part of total electricity, total energy. And significantly, again, a lot of these initiatives are locally driven by communities. You put a wind turbine in and you get a reaction from the community. Well, we don't want it. You give the community the power to decide what they want and the benefits from it, and we think things very differently. And in the southwest, we have plenty of opportunities. We've got plenty of wind. We've got plenty of wave. We've got plenty of jobs that have been created through the renewable industry. And my thanks to Regen for the numbers here. The renewable energy industry is a major employer in the southwest with plenty of opportunities. And if ever you're stuck for ideas, there are even faces around the room here I can see who know only too well of a damn good idea of improving the energy efficiency of a house, of an office, or putting solar panels on the roof. Sorry, the plug there, David. Right, solutions. Sorry, I keep going on about big solutions. It's amazing how we always want to come up with the big solution. This is a painting from Newport Art Gallery of about 150 years ago, or slightly more recently, looking at that train. It's actually moving fast. And we've been talking about a Severn barrage. I'm sorry, my limited knowledge says to me, big proposals like that tend to fail to deliver. Think smaller, think local. We're almost certainly going to achieve more. I had the pleasure of chairing a meeting between a hustings of 5 of the mayoral candidates. And we talked about going green. It was great, it was really encouraging that they were all so committed, right across the political spectrum. But interesting enough, none of them said, oh, the solution is big, let's go for a barrage across the Severn. They all recognise limitations there, not only in terms of limitations on wildlife, but limitations impact on the port, and limitations in terms of what works. And a few statistics for you. This happens to coincide with the time I was at the Environment Agency. And as you can see, when I was involved with the regulation of industry, I wasn't particularly successful at tackling issues in terms of carbon dioxide from industry. For one reason, there was no real incentive. Actually, it was about keeping the power stations going to produce electricity as cheaply as possible. But we had no clear targets, no clear ambitions. Whereas I draw a comparison with sulfur dioxide emissions, that acid rain-forming gas, because we had an EU directive which was very clear as to exactly what was to be achieved year on year and will result in the closure of a lot of our obsolete, and I do say obsolete power stations, then we can make significant changes and significant improvements. And my challenge is, if we can do it there, why can't we do it elsewhere? Yes, I know it requires a lot of discussion, engagement, negotiation, but it can be done. And I'm moving on to air quality now, one of my favourite subjects. And I love this picture because it at last brings home to those who move the money that air quality is an issue. When I joined the Environment Agency, I was told, oh, don't worry about air quality, we've got it sorted. Sorry, no, we haven't. You just can't see the problem. The advanced hospital emissions, the advanced deaths because of poor air quality. How many people die each year because of exposure to waste? How many die because of poor water quality in the UK? Fortunately, very few. But I'm afraid you try to stop breathing for any period of time to avoid poor air quality, and you soon find out what the challenge is. We need to do something about air quality. And it's ironic that it's 60 years since the London smogs, and the challenges we faced then are still with us, except we don't see them. This map of Bristol I find fascinating in terms of air quality, because you look over to Avonmouth, and where once upon a time air quality was an issue in Avonmouth, thanks to good regulation by the Environment Agency, amongst others, and also the fact we've lost most of the industry there, it's not a problem. But you see where the air quality management area is. It's the heart of the city. It's where the roads are. And Bristol actually has got better air quality, better performance than most other cities of the UK. And certainly a hell of a lot better than London. London being one of the most polluted cities in terms of air quality in Europe. And we have to do something about it. And again, it comes down to traffic. And I've simply challenged George Ferguson, our new mayor. He said he wants to do something about the traffic in the city. He's talking about a car-free Sunday a month. That, to me, is the way forward. I've got a vested interest, I have to say. My flat is right in the middle there. So please, can you improve my air quality as well? Now, an example of where air quality has been an issue for a community. Moving a long, long way away, up to Ribblesdale in Lancashire, where for about 200 years there's been a cement works with a tall chimney, providing significant employment in the community. And for those who are interested in atmospheric dispersion modelling, this is a marvellous example of how it should work. The plume gently rises, and you see they've got two chimneys there, and it dissipates, it moves away from the valley. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't. And as you can see, that plume then goes and hits the villages up the valley. And the local communities do not like it. They did not like it. And it was due to the cement works. Tall chimneys here, this is the top of the cement kiln, and the emissions from the chimneys combined with the gases that came out of the quarry to produce this persistent plume. Now, it was actually relatively harmless. But would you want to live in that community? Would you accept that? Now, the regulator, who worked offices a long way away, probably didn't notice too much about that. What they did notice was that chemically, environmentally, no real issue. But it was certainly a cause for complaint. And in 1994, the company started to burn alternative fuels, waste as a fuel. And suddenly, people realised there's a problem here and reacted, lots of complaints. The agency responded. It actually imposed tight conditions on haze and odour in 1998. And what happened? The record numbers of complaints, because there was a reference point at which people could complain. But that to me was right, because at last something was being done. And then the onus fell on the company to engage with the local population to explain what they were doing. From, oh, well, no, don't bother us, no, we don't engage, to actually, we are part of this community. And what we have seen across the country is recognition by many businesses, many industries, that actually they are part of a community. They need to engage. They have to engage. And that is all part of being green for business. It's not just the technologies you put in place, the monitoring that goes in place. It's actually the performance in terms of how you relate to communities. And going back to my early days again in the Environment Agency, one of the first phrases that was painted up in front of me was catchment management, managing the water. And I thought, what on earth they're talking about? But actually, it's spot on. Our planning laws, I would say, are weak. They do not provide adequate protection. We end up with homes, offices, commercial premises built in floodplains. We have more and more development. We, on the countryside, improve drainage so the water runs down as quick as possible. And sure enough, it floods. And therefore, the solution is putting in extra flood defences, extra money, monies which local authorities, central government doesn't have. So let's go back to see the cause of the problem, namely what we have done to cause that water to come running off in the first place. Let's see what nature has done in terms of creating floodplains in the first place and using those as our safety measure, rather than having to rely on retrospective technology. That way, communities can be understood, communities engaged with. And another of my challenges, managing waste. I used to thrive on waste issues. There used to be hundreds of waste issues. All the time I was being presented with marvellous solutions to managing waste. Got this black box. You just put everything in it, close the lid, heat it up usually, bang, all the waste disappeared, and you could either dump it down the bin or wash it down the drain. Basic physics kicks in here. Heavy metals don't burn very well. They tend to stay there. And when you burn organic materials, it doesn't always burn completely. Okay, incinerators. Yeah, great things, incinerators. Really well regulated. One of the most tightly regulated side of industrial process there is. The snag is we don't really want them near us. But look at the alternatives in terms of composting and landfill. Actually, what would you prefer to live near? A compost heap? A landfill site? Or an incinerator? When I asked my students that, the reaction is, well, composting, because it's nice and benign and it's clean. But as Environment Agency colleagues will point out, actually it's those that generate probably most of the complaints and most of the issues. But incinerators to me are the solution of yesterday. Large-scale incineration, feeding in everything that will burn. We need to recover more, take advantage of the resources that we've got in our waste streams and reuse them far better. And this is where, again, we need targets. Zero waste to landfill. It's been so cheap and so easy for so long. What we need to do is ensure that we improve the recovery and recycling. And I will give, I didn't say to the City of Bristol I give them too many compliments, but I will give one compliment to the City of Bristol, that they have grasped this one, and rather than go for large incineration, are looking to get rid of the residual waste by burning it to recover the energy from it, because you can't do much else with it, but recovering the rest of the materials. And there's a very good reason to do so. You can sell them. You can sell them all around the country. This, I'm afraid, is cribbed from Bristol's leaflet to residents to say where things are going. And you can see that there are markets for everything. But why is it then that politicians think it is an Englishman's right to have his bin emptied every week? I think it should be an Englishman's right to be able to recover the wastes that they produce. And for that matter, sorry, why English men? Why not all of us? That's a bit of mathematics for everyone here. You look at these different streams of material. Down the side is how much they're worth. There is a thought that says, well, you chuck everything in the bin, you mix it all together, and somehow or other, further down the road, it gets miraculously separated. Sorry, have you tried separating broken glass? The red bits or the brown bits and the green bits and the white bits? You can't. But if you keep them separate, then you get good value for clear glass particularly, not such good value for brown, and lowest value for green glass. But mix them together, and you get almost nothing. I'm amazed the price has actually gone up slightly in October for that mixed glass. Take paper. You mix it all together, you get the lowest price possible. You keep your paper separate, you keep your paper clean, and it's well worth recovering. But let's talk about value. Plastics. Most plastics are pretty pure chemicals. And what do? We consider them a pain, a problem, put them in the bin. If we kept those large lemonade bottles, those Coke bottles separate from the milk bottles, the white polyethylene, we get good money for those. And the prices here, I think, are probably an underestimate, but maybe £300 a tonne for those large Coke bottles. There's a plant down in South Devon that takes in mixed waste plastics from all over the country and just separates them. They buy in the mixed plastics for about £100 a tonne, and they separate out those mixed plastics into good quality plastics and sell them for £300, £400, £500 a tonne. Very simple, makes commercial sense despite the transport. And what's more, it makes environmental sense because we're not having to remanufacture those plastics all the time. And textiles, best one of all. Those charity shops are doing a marvellous job collecting textiles. £600, £700 a tonne. No wonder we now see rogue textile banks appearing in supermarket car parks so that they can fill them up and then whoop, off they've gone again without anyone noticing. And no wonder we actually see people trying to climb into them to get the textiles out. And as anyone's noticed, they're not designed for people to get in, let alone get out. But an opportunity, commercial opportunity. Some great people here. They've all said things good about the environment. Some perhaps slightly less than others. And some have a solution which is all about fracking. Not my favourite solution. But there are a wide variety of leaders regionally and locally who are committed to the environment, who know what the facts are. And I'd like to just pick on one individual I know who is very committed to the environment, not necessarily one you'd even think of, namely John Cridland, who's the Director General of the CBI. I can remember when he was first appointed, and his first policy was about greening business, because it made sense. His view was that green and growth go together. They are opportunities together. And he knows, as the CBI knows, that environmental goods and services are major contributors to the UK business market, to the UK economy. And it's not just a cost, it's actually a benefit. We make a profit on our environmental goods and services. We're actually just about keeping ahead of everybody else, so long as we're not undermined. And it's big business in terms of numbers of companies, lots of people employed. It's a major job opportunity. And what's more, in a period of economic frustration, decline, challenge, they were accounting for a third of UK economic growth. But, and it's a very big but, business needs several things to invest in environmental goods and services. We need confidence. It is no use having a policy which lasts 6 months, having a U-turn when you've invested large sums of money. Building major plant is a major capital-intensive program which requires support from the banks. And we need to avoid bureaucracy. We need to avoid complexity in what we're doing. Keep it simple. And most of all, it needs to be competitive. UK competitive, European, internationally competitive. We don't want to be undermined. And we see that being adopted by UK business. UK businesses are setting themselves environmental targets. The majority of the FTSE 100 companies have set themselves clear environmental targets because they know it makes sense. A sustainable business is going to be a business which is going to be there in 5, 10, 15 years' time. That's what the long-term stakeholders, the shareholders want. And it's interesting that the area that they set most targets on are carbon, greenhouse gases, followed by waste, because those are major costs to business. They need to reduce them, manage them more than anything else. And in the southwest here, we've got some major opportunities. It's a really big business. It's a £10 billion business. Large numbers of businesses involved, large and small. It employs a lot of people. And as you can see, in terms of the comparison with the rest of the country, other than London, which has all the carbon trading and therefore seems to manage to manufacture a lot of businesses out of paper, we have real businesses producing real things here in the southwest. And we have other opportunities in the southwest. We've got the leading local enterprise partnership, which is bringing together strategic parts of the region. Sorry, I'm not allowed to use that word region anywhere. Greater area, the greater area. And in each of those areas of enterprise, the environment is important. The enterprise zone around Temple Meads, a major opportunity for green technologies. And we have within the enterprise zone, within the enterprise partnership, a low carbon group making a significant contribution to the local enterprise partnership as a whole. But it has a challenge. There are a lot of people out there helping business, and it is a very confusing market. And one of the roles of the LEP, as far as I can see, is actually making sense of all these support organisations, including, if I may say, the Environmental INET sitting in there as well. But what we also need to ensure is we use local expertise. We have a lot of experts in the area, careful here, who know local industry, local opportunities. And there has been a tendency over the past 2 or 3 years to have national contracts, which means that we don't get that local engagement. And I make a plea, if only I could get it heard by politicians in Westminster. It doesn't necessarily mean that big is beautiful, although some of us are. It actually means that it has another tier of inefficiency, another tier of communication. We can probably achieve far more locally. And I have to mention the Environmental INET. We are doing a great job here amongst smaller businesses. We are engaging with small businesses. Small businesses are going to be the big businesses of the future. They are able to respond more quickly. And what's more, we've got a lot of support from larger businesses, from suppliers, from customers. We've got those links. And I think it's important that we continue to recognise the contribution from small businesses to our economy. But whether we're small or large, we have to ensure that the environment and environmental thinking is embedded in organisations from top to bottom, from the organisation through to the marketing, through to the supply chain. And what's more, it has to be active. It can't be static. It's no use having an environmental standard and sticking to it and not thinking, oh, there's some improvements we could make. It's actually a case of continual improvement, reviewing performance, reviewing waste, because nothing else, the world's moving on. Fuel prices are going up. The cost of waste is going up. We have to respond accordingly. And I'm a firm supporter of standards. You probably picked this up by now. But one of them is the importance of management standards, managing business, managing processes. Yeah, it's a pain having to actually say what you're going to do and stick to it. But what it does mean is you can look at your performance. You can reduce the costs of waste. You can save energy. You can save raw materials. You can look at your supply chain and see where you can make improvements. But amongst everything else, and going back to engaging with customers, engaging with communities, can actually show that you've done something about it. Now just pick up one other initiative, the Eco-Management and Audit Scheme, which to me is the gold standard that I'd love to see us all aspiring to. First of all, it's voluntary. We do it because we want to do it rather than we're forced to. It's got the backing of a European regulation, which actually the advantage of regulations means it doesn't get diluted, confused by UK government and rewritten. It's a straight requirement imposed, available to us all. But what it does do is provide recognition and reward for those who go beyond minimum standards. Those who really do aspire to going green, commitment to the environment, and continually improving that spiral environmental performance. It's about communicating with the public, a public statement on environmental performance, so the public have got confidence what's going on. And they've got confidence because it's independently checked and verified. So justification. And to me, it means that those companies, those organisations, those businesses have actually earned their credibility and the recognition. And here I will give major credit to the City of Bristol, which has just got an award at European level for its EMAS registration and its EMAS scheme here. We can do it. Even, dare I say, bureaucratic local authorities can actually overcome the issues that they face, be very focused on their environmental performance and achieve and deliver. And apologies, I'm sure Bristol isn't really bureaucratic. I'm sure incredibly slick and organised and efficient. There's a hear from the Bristol there. Over to the regulators now. And I will give the Environment Agency a lot of credit for, as an organisation which is so often at the beheld of political masses, being pushed backwards and forwards, recognising it's got a major challenge in terms of good performance amongst some businesses, bad performance amongst others, and adapting its approach accordingly. From the criminal, where enforcement action is the only answer, through to those who really do aspire to high environmental standards. Just let them get on with it. But I do challenge the regulators to get it right in terms of who does what. Going back to the issue of communities, who are best placed to engage with communities? I would say local authorities, even below local councillors. I know more about how local councillors involve themselves with local communities than ever before, and it's really encouraging that they pick up all the local issues. So where we've got something which has a national impact, like my power station, then we could probably have one or two people who set the standards. We don't need to have regulators going out and doing close inspection. On the other hand, we've got some things like the cement works, which are high profile, do require a significant amount of regulation, national standards. We get some activities which I'm afraid are a nuisance, like the composting, like animal treatment, where there are issues. My suggestion there is that we need to involve local authorities more in resolving those. We've got a lot of things which, quite frankly, are small, insignificant, not worth hassle, not worth spending time and effort on. Let's cut the issues there. Let's leave them to get on with things. So, last point for me, standards. Standards about people. I mentioned standards of business, but it's standards of people that really interest me. Because to have confidence in what's going on, we all need standards. In the accountancy profession, we have certified accountants doing our books. We need to be confident in what they're doing. We need to have confidence in the doctors who look after us. Let's have confidence in the environmentalists who are protecting our welfare, be they regulators or be they leaders in industry. So I'd love to see far more confidence in the environmental profession, recognition of environmental professional standards. Here we talk about the chartered environmentalist. Looking down the criteria for a chartered environmentalist, it's motherhood and apple pie. It's all the things we believe in. So let's get some more people involved in the standards there. So, we're getting to the end. Going green, what is it about? To me, it's about having confidence in the competency of the people involved, in industry, business, communities, and regulators. It's about having confidence in the outcomes, what we're trying to achieve, tackling the source of the problem, not just the effect. Looking at the economic benefits, the economic effects, both good and bad, of the environment. And yes, recognizing in terms of raw materials, energy, we do need security of supply. Carrots. We need to give incentives. We need to share incentives. What works well in terms of energy use? Again, source efficiency. And also managing waste, but being prepared, I hate to say it, for climate change. And we need a few canes. I'm sorry, I couldn't come up with any other C word. But I'm sure the regulators don't always use canes. But we need robust enforcement. It needs proportionate, national and local. And one of my frustrations when involved with the Environment Agency is we spend a long time working up civil sanctions. A great idea in terms of flexibility of response, informal, impartial agreement to solve problems. Ideal for discussions, particularly with smaller businesses. And what does someone do? Come along and say, oh no, we'll cut those out for smaller businesses. They're seen as bureaucratic, non-transparent. Sorry, I believe in talking, engaging. We don't need to have that stick, that cane there all the time. So we have options. We can go backwards. We can go back to those Victorian standards, the Edwardian standards, that Edwardian or Victorian environment, or we can go forwards. So, going green, what does it mean? It's not only a business opportunity, it's a major business opportunity. In fact, going green for business, for sustainable business, is a necessity. Yeah, it is a regulatory challenge. Be proportionate, adapting to changes, responding to the fact that a company has got a management system, so why duplicate? Why start from scratch? Why not build on what a company has already put in place? Looking for outcomes. And it's not just environmental outcomes, it's society's outcomes, the benefits to social groups, communities, and financial benefits from it all. And it's about standards. Standards for individuals, standards of us all who aspire to going green, showing that we've actually got the credentials, the knowledge, the experience, as well as standards of the processes we work, and standards in terms of the objectives we're trying to achieve. For those of us who think about going green, we have a challenge. Let's say we can either go back or we can go forward. I'd like to leave you with a picture. This, to me, is the ideal environmentalist. For those who know, it's a piranha. And a piranha has a great advantage. It's part of the ecosystem. It fits with the environment. It's fast. It gets rid of waste. It'll nibble your toes if you don't watch out. So it'll keep you on your toes. It'll be making you think all the time. And by the way, it also happens to be going green. Thank you very much indeed.